everybody. Welcome. Better Spaces is a health and happiness solution for today's hybrid workplace. My name is Dr. Paul Cachot with PAR5 Physical Therapy here in Randolph, and I've partnered with them to bring you an easy and educational workday session. Today's session is the golf speed workout or the swing speed workout, part 1. A little bit about me. I'm a physical therapist and orthopedic clinical specialist and a certified golf medical professional from Titleist Performance Institute. And I've been through their program, gotten to the level 3. So a lot of the things that I use with my golf clients, we're going to learn today. All right. So if you have any questions, feel free to use the chat, or you could email me or Better Spaces at the emails I'm going to be giving out later. All right. So let's start off opening up my little slideshow here. So welcome. This is the Swing Speed Workshop Part 1. We're going to go over a couple of things. And, to start off, I'm going to give you a little bit of information here. Did you know that 18 of the last 20 major championships were won by a player that had a TPI expert on their team? And a lot of the top players in the world have a team around them that are certified by Titleist Performance Institute so that they can customize their program and get the best out of the performance. All right. So the stuff that we're going to go over today is very useful information to increase your ball speed and your club head speed, but it is not physical therapy. It's not medical advice. So if you're dealing with a specific injury, issue, pain, or ache, please get it checked out. Have a physical exam and consult your medical professional before doing some of the things that we're going to do today. All right, so golfers, just like any other athlete, can benefit from a healthy and efficient body. If you can move well, you'll feel better and you could play better. All right, so if you've been to any of my talks before, you've probably seen this video. And again, it's one of the big things that I use during my assessment and treatment to figure out what parts of the body that we need to look at, because the human body functions on this alternating pattern of stability and mobility. If this pattern is disrupted, then we have pain or injury or inefficient movement. So let's think about the golf swing. The golf swing is very rotary. There's a lot of rotation, a lot of mobile parts. But we also have parts that need to be stable, that need to hold down. That comes into play later on. So you can see with most golfers, with good golf swings, you have to have a mobile thoracic spine. The T-spine is classified as a mobile segment. And if we look down, the hips need to be a mobile segment. Oftentimes, a lot of my clients and people that I work with, they have a tight T-spine and tight hips. And what happens with that is that the stable section, the lower back, tends to turn into an unstable or a mobile segment. And if we have a poor core stability or core abdominal strength and you're weak through the abdominals, there's no way that you can transmit any ground reaction force or strength in the lower body to the upper body, and then ultimately into the arm and then ultimately into the club. So these are some things that we'll have to work on and improve if we want to move fast and move well. Now, the key to moving fast or increasing your club head speed is what we call the kinematic sequence. Now, if you think about a whip moves the fastest at the distal end. All the way at the tip of that whip, it creates so much speed that it breaks the sound barrier and you hear that crack. But at the beginning, at the other end, where the person is holding the end of the whip, they have to create that movement. That wave through the whip needs to build through the whole whip and then really accentuate or get really fast at the end. The same thing happens with the golf swing. If we think about the things that we're moving, we want to move your pelvis, we want to move your torso, we want to move your arm, we want to move the club. And this next slide is going to talk about what is the rotational speeds that need to happen and in what sequence that needs to happen. So we have red, which represents the torso, the pelvis, and the green triangle there, that represents the torso. And then we have the blue, which represents the arm, and then the gold, which finally represents the club. This slide right here is the key to an efficient and fast golf swing. So you could see at this point here where everything kind of right in this section right here, I've got my finger on it, that is the impact, right? So right here is impact. All the way out here is the address position. And then we go through time here at the top of your backswing, and then the downswing happens in this gray area. Then we have impact, and then we have follow through. So you could see in this gray area, the humps, the peaks of this speed of the red, green, blue, and then finally gold. The fastest piece, the fastest segment that's moving the fastest is the gold segment, right? We want that to be moving the fastest at impact. That's the club head. And then if we back it up a little bit in time, the next peak that we see is the blue, which is the arm. And then before that, we have the green, which reaches its peak right before the blue, and that's the thorax, the torso. And then before that, then we have the red, which is the pelvis. So those peaks happen in sequence. It has to be, the pelvis moves fast, and then it slows down. It transfers that speed to the torso, the thorax. And then that slows down, but it transfers its speed to the arm, and then the arm slows down, and that transfers the speed into the club. So that's the kinematic sequence. Each sequence builds its speed upon the other one. So the key to acceleration is actually deceleration. You go back to that example of the whip. As the end starts to move through, as that sequence of movement goes through the whip, it has to slow down to transfer that speed all the way to the tip of that whip. And the way to initiate our downswing sequence, I tell a lot of people, a lot of my clients that I work with, is what's the first thing that you think about? How do you initiate your downswing? So you get to the top of your backswing, whatever that may look like, how do we start this downswing? That downswing should happen from the ground up. Everybody's probably heard about that we need to move the feet, but how do we move the feet? And if we can move the feet in the correct way, we can really start this whip pattern, this kinematic sequence properly, more rotation versus lateral movement. A lot of times people say to me, it's like, yeah, I start my downswing getting my weight to my left. All right, sure. You're going from for a right-handed golfer, moving the weight from your trail side to your lead side. But how exactly are you doing that? You just need to get it over there. And then all we think about is just lateral motion, right? Lateral motion from side to side. The golf swing is more rotary. Take a look at this picture. This is a hockey player. He's on ice. He's in his address position. He's got a golf ball. Now, the next slide, he's going to hit that golf ball. And now he's actually going to hit it into the goal. But I want you to pay attention to what happens with his feet, what happens to his torso. So I'm going to play it here. So here we are at the top of your backswing. That's fine. What happens on the downswing? What do his feet do? So because he's on ice and it's a slippery surface, you could see how he's pushing and pulling with his feet to create this rotary component. So he is pulling with the trail leg and he is pushing with the lead leg. So if you go to the top of your backswing to create a lot of ground reaction force, we want to dig that inside heel of the trail side and dig that heel back. So we're pulling that side and then pushing the trail toe, kind of like pushing it forward. So if we do the trail side pulling and the lead side pushing, then we've got that rotation. That's how we create rotation, not just get to your left side or get to your lead side. It's not just about that. It's about where do we apply that? It's really from back, or in the case of a right-handed golfer, the right heel, right inside heel to left lead side toe, trying to push that and pull that. All right. And you could probably see this on a lot of the long drive hitters, because to hit it far, we have to magnify those ground reaction forces. So you can see in a lot of these players here, that lead foot pushes back and out of the way, right? So they're really creating a lot of ground reaction force, and more importantly, what we call vertical force. So it's not just rotation, it's not just side to side, it's up and down. And if you are able to create a lot of vertical force, we can create a lot of club head speed. We can translate that vertical force into the club ultimately. All right. So if we talk about golf fitness, talk about increasing your speed. If we want to move fast, we want to train fast. All right. But before we get to the fast movements, the exercises that really ramp up your fast twitch muscles and get you moving faster so you can hit the ball farther, we have to look at this pyramid. All right. This movement pyramid, or this hierarchy of movement. We cannot have the top end here, that skill, that sport up top here, there it is, without having power and speed. But even without power, we can't have power and speed without strength and flexibility. We can't have that without tissue extensibility and flexibility. We can't have that without just basic range of motion and joint mobility. So if we're going to be talking about in part 2 in 2 weeks, talking about exercises that really ramp up the speed up top here, we can't do those exercises unless we have a solid base. Don't have a solid base, you jump to this, you're talking about getting hurt, all right? And we don't want to do that. We don't want to create injury and build on a faulty or unstable base. We have to have a wide base, have to have good range of motion, have to have good strength before we have power, and then we have speed. And then finally, we can really be good at the skill or at our sport, all right? So we have to build this movement pyramid from the ground up. And the basic parts of that bottom end is mobility, being able to move well so that we can play well. And then also another one is core stability. So we talked about how this middle, the lower back, that needs to be a stable segment. And that stable segment requires you to have a good, strong core so that when you generate the force through the hips, through the pelvis, that force through the big muscles of your glutes and hip muscles, that can be transferred into the torso. And then ultimately that can go into the arm and into the club. All right. So torso mobility, hip mobility, and core stability. These are things that we're going to be talking about. Now, one of the first things that I teach people is how to do a hip hinge. All right. So the hip hinge is basically this motion. All right. So the hip hinge is being able to move, get in and out of a dress position, or pick something up off the ground, get up out of a chair, something functional like that without moving the spine. So I'm going to switch my cameras here. We're going to come back here so you get the full view. And what we're looking at here from the side view, I'm going to grab my stick, and you could use like a broom handle at home or whatever. And we want 3 points of contact. The 3 points of contact are going to be pelvis right here, mid back between my shoulder blades, and behind the head. So these 3 points of contact give us our reference point as being straight. My spine is straight. I'm holding the stick just above my waist, right above the belt line, and that's the lumbar spine. And there's a natural curve in there that has enough space for me to put my hand in. All right. So from this position, what we're going to do is simply, can we get into golf posture? And that's it. All right. So I'm here. I can kind of maintain contact between the pelvis, mid back, and head. This is golf posture. This is the most efficient way to set up and get into a position where you can hit a ball and open up the torso so that the torso can move and rotate, and the hips can rotate. A lot of times what I see is people will lose the contact with the head because of our posture, our daily positions and postures we put ourselves in. We get into this rounded forward position, and it becomes difficult for us to kind of get the head to this position. So if I'm here, oftentimes I'll see this. People just kind of get into this, I'm going to address here. And this is not a way, especially with a rounded mid-back, to create rotation through the torso. All right. The thoracic spine needs to be open or more neutral, and the hips need to be in that position so that we're in a good position that we can create this rotation. All right. So really simple stretches we're going to go through, super easy. I'm just going to get on the ground really quick. If you've been to any of my other courses, you've probably seen these. So I'm just going to go real fast with these. This is called the open book stretch for the thoracic spine. We're going to bring those knees up so that our hips are flexed. We're going to grab the ribs underneath here, keeping the knees together. We're going to rotate away. So we're going to create this rotation. You should feel this stretch through the torso, the thoracic spine as I'm doing that. So you repeat that, maybe about a minute to 2 minutes, repeating on both sides. All right, so that's the open book. We could also do a hip drop. The hip drop is for the hips, mobilizing the hips. We're going to be on our back. The feet are going to be extra wide. The feet need to be wider than the hips. And then from here, keeping your ribs still, we're going to rotate the knees inward and outward, so left to right, to easily stretch out the hips. The big thing with this is not to let the pelvis come off the floor. We're not going to pop that up. We want to keep that nice and tight to the ground, keeping the core engaged and doing this, okay? So this is hip mobility and thoracic mobility, simple things that you could work on to start building that base. Now, the next thing I want to work on is some core stability, or to create that core strength. A lot of times, people will do like, what do you call this? Sit-ups and abdominal crunches, and that does not apply or carry over to what golf is like. So golf is not done on the ground. Golf is done in an upright position. So the next thing I would like to show you is called a thing called the Palloff press. So the Palloff press is done with a band or a cable or something, and we want that band or cable to be away, perpendicular from your body, okay? So I've got this attached here to my treadmill. I'm going to be facing 90 degrees away from where that is. I'm going to take my hands, I'm going to grip this band, put my hands right on my chest, all right? And as I step away, I create tension, and that tension, I'm going to find out a tension that feels comfortable for me. And then from there, I'm just going to get into a golf posture. All right. So can I get into a golf posture? Here we are. And then from here, wherever my sternum is, wherever my spine angle is, I'm going to put my hands perpendicular to that. So I'm not going to put my hands where my club would be if I'm addressing the ball, but I'm just going to put them out at a 90-degree angle from my chest. All right. And if you're doing this properly, you should feel a lot of the inside glute, inside hip. So in this case, my right hip is working to hold me against the band. And I should feel my abdominals working in this position as well. We hold this for about 20 to 30 seconds, and we can repeat that 2 to 3 times on each side if you feel comfortable. So I'll show you from the other side. Okay. So the big thing is that as we're getting into this position, hopefully I can stay in frame here, is that when we bring the hands out in front, that they do not go off center, all right? So we start here, we're maintaining that position, and we're just pushing straight out and holding that position. It's an anti-rotation exercise, okay? So maybe I can get into this position here. Here I am, making sure that this is perpendicular to me, and then I'm just gonna push straight out. So hopefully you can see that in my camera 1. My camera 2's got a little bit of a diagonal angle, but this we're going to try and hold. All right. So holding that should turn this on, and then that'll build up some stability through the core. And then can we add motion to this? So motion would be, can I go and rotate just the top half of my body? I've had clients do this and have a hard time trying to keep the lower body still. They tend to move the lower body as well, but we want that separation. We want that X factor. So we're going to try and do that without moving the lower body. Or can we move only the lower body and not move the upper body? So that's rotation. So that's pushing and pulling, like in that video with the hockey player. I'm pulling and pushing, getting my hips to swivel, not side to side. I'm not shifting my body weight. So that movement right there will help cue you into feeling out what rotation is. Now, when we talk about the other part of golf fitness and moving fast, is that we have to have the stability to do so, but we need to have the strength to do so. So the movement that I typically get my clients to kind of train in is what we call a hip hinge or a deadlift. And it's taking a kettlebell. I think it's the easiest way. You can also do this with a dumbbell or a barbell as well. But we're just getting into a position where we're starting straight, and then we're going into that golf posture, and then maybe even going a little bit farther into that, really focusing on keeping the shin vertical. The shin is over my ankle, my hips are back, my back is straight, and I'm hinging at the hip. So I'm getting into golf posture, going past it, maybe a little bit deeper, all right? And this weight that we're using, right now I got this 25-pound kettlebell here. We want this to be heavy. And if we can move heavy weights, slow and controlled, and create tension through the whole body as we're moving the weight, then we could start to move light things fast. And ultimately, that will work on those fast twitch muscles. But if we try and move fast without a lot of strength or stability, then we run the risk of injury.